Somewhere between what is real and what should never be remembered, there exists a place where stories are buried, not written in books, not spoken aloud, but passed from fear to fear. These stories were never meant for you. They were locked away, forgotten, sealed behind silence. Every voice you hear belongs to someone who listened too long. Tonight, you will hear what they heard, and once it enters your mind, it doesn't leave. This is your final warning. Welcome to the stories that watch you back.
If you grew up anywhere that the road names sound like warnings, you already know this feeling. The kind where the trees stand too close, the porch lights stop a mile back, and the dark turns thick like river mud. Tonight I am going to tell you what happened to me out in the backwoods of the United States, where the map still has blank spots, where cell service dies like a candle, and where the forest does not care if you are lost. This is a first-person story. It is slow burn, it is rural, it is night-heavy, and it is the kind of horror that feels like it could happen to anyone who takes the wrong turn and keeps driving anyway. No warnings left, just the road. I took the job because it sounded simple and because I needed money fast. A short contract, survey work, boundary confirmation on an old parcel the county records kept arguing about. The kind of work where you carry a GPS unit and a clipboard and you pretend you are not alone even when you are. The email that hired me was normal. The pay was better than normal. The address was not. A place with a name that made my teeth itch the first time I read it. Hollow Pines Road. I looked it up. The nearest town had one of those names that looks friendly on a postcard but feels tired in your mouth. A dot between state lines. A place built around a river that did not sparkle anymore. A place with a feed store, a diner, and a gas station that also sold ammo and bait and cheap coffee that tasted like burned plastic. I drove in late afternoon and the sun was still up, but it was the wrong kind of daylight. Thin, weak, like it had been drained through the branches. The last stretch of highway rolled into two-lane blacktop. Then the blacktop became patched pavement. Then it became gravel. Then it became dirt. The farther I went, the more the trees leaned inward like they were trying to listen. I had printed directions because I had learned the hard way not to trust a phone. The paper said to turn at a rusted mailbox painted with a black bird. It said to pass a bridge with no guardrails. It said to keep going when the road forked and the left path looked more used. The paper did not say anything about how quiet it would be. No wind. No birds. No bugs ticking at the windshield. The kind of silence that makes you hear your own pulse too clearly. I came over a small rise and saw the town. I used the word town, but it was more like a handful of buildings that had decided to stop moving. A diner. A gas station. A low brick post office. A church with a steeple that looked too sharp. I pulled into the gas station and killed the engine. The sudden absence of sound made my ears ring. Inside, a bell chimed when I opened the door. An old man behind the counter looked up slowly. He did not smile. He did not frown. His face sat on his skull like it had been put there and forgotten. I nodded, asked if the pump outside worked. He said it worked. His voice sounded like gravel dragged across glass. Not loud, not quiet, just flat. I paid inside. He watched my hands like he was counting my fingers. When I told him where I was headed, his eyes did something small and sharp. Hollow Pines Road, I said, like it was just another place. He leaned forward a little. He did not ask why. He did not ask who I was meeting. He just said that people who drove out there sometimes drove back different. I laughed because that is what you do when someone says something like that in a gas station under buzzing lights. The laugh died halfway out of my throat. Because he did not blink. Because he did not soften the statement with a grin. He just looked past me at the window, at my truck, at the tree lean beyond the pumps. I asked if there was a motel nearby. He told me there was one, but it was full. I asked if there was somewhere to camp. He told me the woods were thick and the ground was wet and it was going to get cold. Then he added, like it was a casual thing, that if I stayed out there after dark, I should keep my lights off. That line landed wrong. I asked why. He shrugged, slow. Said it was better if they thought you were part of the dark. I left with the uneasy feeling of being watched by something that did not live in the building, something that waited in the quiet between words. Outside, the sky was turning that bruised color that comes before night, the last light draining into the tree line. I drove toward Hollow Pines Road anyway. You tell yourself you are a professional. You tell yourself you do this kind of work all the time. You tell yourself old men in rural gas stations say strange things because they have seen too many outsiders get spooked by raccoons and owls. You tell yourself that until the road signs stop appearing. Until the trees close in so tight that the world becomes a tunnel. Until your headlights turn the woods into a flickering film strip of trunks and shadows. The turn for Hollow Pines Road was not marked. There was no sign, no reflective post. Just an opening in the brush where tire tracks cut into mud. My printed directions said I would see a mailbox painted with a black bird. I saw it. It was not painted. The bird was real. A dead crow nailed to the front like a warning. I sat there with my hands on the wheel and the truck idling, staring at the stiff black body and the dull eye that caught the last bit of daylight. I told myself it was a hunter being crude. Teenagers. Someone trying to keep people off private property. But the crow was nailed dead center like a marker. Like a sign. I turned onto the road. Mud grabbed my tires. The truck rocked and complained. The trees immediately swallowed the last of the fading sky. The air changed. It smelled older. Wet leaves and rot. A metallic edge underneath, like pennies in your mouth. After a mile, the road dipped and I crossed the bridge the directions mentioned. No guardrails. Just rough planks and a creek below that ran black even with the last light. Water moved too quietly, like it was trying not to be heard. On the far side of the bridge, the woods grew denser. Pines rose tall and straight, their needles swallowing sound. The headlights illuminated a narrow path, everything outside the beams turning into a thick wall of dark. My GPS pinged and spun and failed. A little message popped up saying signal lost. I laughed again, short and sharp, because it felt better than swallowing the growing fear. Then the truck radio crackled. I had it on low. Just background noise. A station from town playing classic rock so faint it felt like it was coming from a different room. The sound cut out. Static rolled in like wind through dead grass. Then the static shaped itself into something that almost sounded like words. Not clear, not quite speech, but patterned, intentional. My skin prickled. I reached to turn the radio off. Before my fingers touched the knob, the static stopped. Silence filled the cab so completely it felt physical. Then, from somewhere outside the truck, I heard it. A knock. Not on the door. Not on the window. On the body of the truck, somewhere behind me. One knock. Hard. Then nothing. I froze with my hand hovering near the radio. I looked in the rear-view mirror. My headlights threw nothing useful behind me, just a ribbon of muddy road and the gleam of wet leaves. I told myself it was a branch, a pine cone, a rock kicked up by my own tires. Then it happened again. 2 knocks, this time closer to the driver's side. I gripped the wheel and kept moving. I did not stop. I did not open a window. I did not lean out like an idiot. The knocks followed for another minute, spaced out, like someone walking beside the truck and tapping it to make sure I knew they were there. Then they stopped all at once. I let out a breath I did not know I was holding. The road forked ahead. The left track looked more used, the ruts deeper, the mud slicker. The right track looked almost clean, as if nothing drove there. My direction said keep going when the road forked and the left path looked more used. I took the left. The forest tightened. My headlights caught pale ribbons hanging from branches. At first I thought it was plastic trash. Then I realized it was cloth. Strips of fabric tied around the trees at eye level. Some white. Some faded red. Some dark enough that they looked like dried blood. They fluttered without wind. Every few yards there was another. It looked like someone had marked a trail, or a boundary, or a ritual. The road climbed and then leveled out. Ahead, through the trees, I saw a house. Not a normal house. A structure that looked too big for the woods and too old for the way it stood. 2 stories. Sagging porch. Windows dark. The roofline broken by the silhouette of a stone chimney that looked like a gravestone in the night. The yard was not a yard. It was a clearing full of dead grass and scattered tree stumps like amputations. A wooden sign hung from 2 posts out front. The letters were carved deep. Hollow pines below it. Smaller letters I could barely read in the headlights. Keep to the road. The truck rolled to a stop without me meaning it to. I sat and stared at the house and the sign. The feeling in my chest was not just fear. It was recognition, like my body had arrived somewhere it remembered from a bad dream. I forced myself to move. I pulled into the clearing and parked near the porch. The engine died. The headlights washed over the front steps and the closed door. The door was not locked. I could tell because the latch sat crooked. I should have left. I should have turned around and driven back to town and let the county argue about their parcel lines without me. But the job email had a contact name. It had told me to pick up a key from a lockbox on the porch post. I got out of the truck. Night hit me like cold water. The air was damp and heavy. The woods around the clearing looked like a wall of ink. My flashlight beam swept the porch. Dust, old leaves, spiderwebs glinting like fine wire. On the porch post was a metal lockbox with a combination dial. The combination was in the email. I spun it with shaking fingers. The box popped open. Inside was a key and a folded note. I unfolded it. The handwriting was neat and careful, like someone trying to be polite in an emergency. Do your work in daylight. Do not go into the trees. If you hear your name, do not answer. If you see lights, turn yours off. If you smell smoke, hold your breath. I read it twice. Then I looked up at the dark windows of the house. I did not like how the note assumed I would stay. I did not like how it assumed the woods had rules. But I had driven hours. It was fully night. The road back was mud and forks and bridges with no rails. So I told myself I would sleep a few hours, start at dawn, finish fast, and leave. I unlocked the front door. It opened with a sigh like the house was tired. Inside, the air was stale. The smell of old wood, mildew, and something else underneath. A faint ash scent like a fireplace that had been used recently even though everything looked abandoned. My flashlight beam picked out furniture covered in sheets. A staircase leading up. A hallway to the right. A kitchen to the left. On the wall near the door hung a set of deer antlers. Beneath them, nailed into the wood, was a horseshoe turned upside down. Bad luck, my grandmother used to say. It lets all the good spill out. I stepped in and shut the door behind me. The click of the latch sounded too loud. I stood still, listening. For a moment, there was nothing but the soft creak of the house settling. Then, faintly, from somewhere deeper inside, a sound like a floorboard shifting. Not the natural groan of old wood. A careful step. I froze. My flashlight beam held steady on the hall. I waited for another sound. Another step. A cough. Anything. Silence. I moved slowly through the living room, checking corners like I had any right to do that. Sheets over chairs. Dust thick enough to write your name in. A fireplace with old soot. No fresh footprints. In the kitchen, the cupboards hung open. A few cracked plates on the floor. A sink stained dark. On the kitchen table, someone had left a mason jar filled with water. In the jar floated something pale. I leaned closer, flashlight beam steady. A tooth. Too big to be human. Too clean to be old. My stomach turned. I set my pack down in the living room anyway, because I was trying to keep the lie going. The lie that this was a job. A place to sleep. A weird rural rental. Upstairs, I did not go. I told myself I did not need to. I could sleep on the couch with my boots on and my keys in my pocket. I left my flashlight on the coffee table, pointed at the ceiling so it lit the room softly. Then I sat and stared at the dark hallway, listening to the house breathe. Minutes passed. Maybe an hour. My eyes grew heavy. Then the smell came again. Smoke. Faint at first, like someone far away burning leaves. Then stronger, curling through the stale house air. The note flashed in my mind. If you smell smoke, hold your breath. I stopped breathing. I sat there with my lungs burning and listened. Somewhere outside, a low crackle. Not a fireplace. Not a kitchen stove. A brush fire sound. I rose slowly and walked to the front window, careful not to step too hard. I pulled back the curtain. In the clearing, at the edge of the woods, there were lights. Not flashlights. Not headlights. Little points of orange moving between the trees like fireflies, too big and too steady. Lanterns. They drifted in a line, bobbing as if carried by people. But I saw no bodies. Only the lights. They moved along the tree line, circling the clearing like a slow patrol. My mouth went dry. I remembered the gas station man saying, "Keep your lights off." My flashlight on the coffee table made a pale glow in the window. I lunged back and clicked it off. The room plunged into darkness. Outside, the lanterns paused. All at once, as if they had noticed. My heart hammered so hard I felt it in my teeth. I crouched near the window, not daring to peek again. Then I heard it. A voice. Not inside the house. Outside, close to the porch. Soft. Familiar. My name spoken in the exact cadence of someone who knew me. My throat tightened. I did not answer. The voice said my name again, patient, almost kind. I pressed my hand over my mouth to keep from making any sound. The voice changed slightly, like it was adjusting. It began to list things about me. Real things. My childhood street. My mother's laugh. The college I went to. The color of my first car. Each detail hit like a finger pressed into a bruise. It was not guessing. It was not bluffing. It was remembering. I backed away from the front door, step by careful step, until my shoulders touched the living room wall. The voice drifted along the porch, moving from the door toward the window. My name again, closer. Then a sound like fingernails drawn slowly across wood. The porch railing. The window frame. A scraping that felt like it was inside my skull. I held my breath until my vision blurred. Finally, the voice stopped. The scraping stopped. The lanterns outside began to move again, drifting away from the house and deeper into the trees. Only then did I allow myself to breathe, shallow and quiet. I did not sleep. I sat on the floor until the black outside the windows softened into the earliest gray. When dawn came, it did not bring comfort. It brought detail. The clearing was a churn of mud and dead grass. The tree line stood like a courtroom of trunks. And there were footprints. Not in the mud near my truck. On the porch. Bare feet prints pressed into dust, leading to the front door and back again. The toes long. The arch wrong, too flat, like the foot was more hand than foot. I stared at them until my eyes watered. Then I did what I should have done immediately. I started the truck. The engine coughed and caught. The sound felt obscene in the quiet morning. I threw my gear in without caring if it was organized. I turned the truck around in the clearing, tires spitting mud. As I rolled toward the road, I saw something nailed to the signpost. A fresh strip of cloth. And beside it, hanging limp, a crow feather still glossy with oil. A message. You are marked. I drove fast, too fast for the ruts. The bridge came and went. The fork appeared. I did not think. I took the left again out of habit. The road narrowed. The trees leaned closer. Then I realized something that made my grip go slippery on the wheel. The fabric strips were gone. Not fallen. Not moved. Gone as if they had never been there. My headlights were off now, but the morning light made the woods look even stranger. Colors muted. shadows too heavy. My GPS still had no signal. I kept driving, expecting at any moment to see the Dead Crow mailbox, the opening back to the main road. Instead, the road dipped and climbed and curved. Then, through the trees, I saw the bridge again. The same guardrail-less planks. The same black water. I crossed it, breath shallow, and watched the far side. The far side looked identical to the side I had just left. Same leaning pine. Same split stump. Same rock shaped like a skull. My stomach dropped. I kept driving. The fork appeared. I took the left. The fabric strips were back, hanging still, fluttering without wind. The house appeared ahead through the trees. The sign. Hollow pines keep to the road. I slammed the brakes so hard the truck skidded. I reversed, tires grinding. I turned around and drove back the way I came. I crossed the bridge. The fork. The bridge again. The fork again. Each time, the same markers. Each time, the same stretch of road looped like a noose. The woods were not letting me leave. Or the road was not. I stopped the truck in the middle of the dirt track and sat there, breathing hard. You want to think there is a logical explanation. A series of similar forks. Bad directions. A panic spiral. But my fuel gauge had dropped too much for that. Time had passed. I had been driving. And still I was circling back to the same house like a moth to a porch light. I got out of the truck. The moment my boots hit the ground, the forest sound changed. Not louder. More present. A soft hiss of needles in the branches. A distant creak like trees rubbing together. Then the smell of smoke again, faint and crawling. I remembered the note. Hold your breath. I did. And in that held silence, I heard something I had not heard before. Breathing. Not mine. Out in the trees, just beyond where the road vanished into shadow. Slow. Deep. Patient. Like something large resting behind the pines. I got back in the truck and shut the door. The breathing did not stop. It moved closer. Not fast. Not aggressive. Like it knew I could not go anywhere. I started the truck and drove toward the house again because the road would not let me choose anything else. I hated the thought of returning, but the clearing felt safer than the tunnel of trees. At least there I could see the tree lean. I pulled into the clearing and parked. In daylight, the house looked worse. Not abandoned. Maintained in a way that felt wrong, like someone cared enough to preserve the decay. On the porch, the bare footprints were gone. But something else was there. A new note, tucked under the lockbox lid. Same neat handwriting. You drove the loop. Now you have to pay attention. Do not go into the trees. Do not follow lights. Do not speak your name. When night comes, choose one door and keep it closed. I read it and felt cold slide down my spine. Choose one door. Like the house had more than one way in. I looked at the front door, then at the windows, then at the side of the house where the kitchen door would be. Then I saw it. The cellar doors. 2 slanted doors set into the ground near the porch, half covered in dead grass. One of them was slightly open. A black crack leading down. The ash smell rose stronger from that direction. I walked toward it without meaning to, like the smell had a hook in it. My flashlight was in my hand before I realized it. I stood over the cellar doors and stared into the darkness. At first, I saw nothing. Then my eyes adjusted. There were stairs going down. Dirt steps. Rough beams. And on the wall just inside, scratched deep into the wood, was a pattern of marks. Tallies. Hundreds of them. Grouped in uneven clusters. I could not stop looking. My brain tried to turn them into something harmless, like old tenant records or kids playing a game. Then the smoke smell surged. A wave of it, hot and sudden, like something had exhaled from below. My vision swam. My lungs wanted to inhale. I clamped my mouth shut and stumbled back, holding my breath so hard my chest ached. I slammed the cellar door shut with my boot. The wood thudded and settled. For a few seconds, the smell faded. I sucked in a shallow breath and tasted ash. Then I heard it. A knock. From below the cellar doors. One knock. Hard. Patient. Then another. Slower. Like a fist against wood. Like something asking to be let out. I backed away until my heels hit the porch steps. I stared at the cellar doors. The knocking stopped. Silence returned. But the silence was different now. Waiting. I went inside and locked the front door, even though the lock felt weak in my hand. I checked the windows. All shut. All dusty. Then I walked through the house to the kitchen and checked the back door. It was shut, but the frame was warped. Light leaked around the edges. I kept hearing the note in my head. When night comes, choose one door and keep it closed. I did not understand why. So I started checking the house properly. The hallway led to a small room with a warped mirror. My reflection looked off, like the angles were wrong. Like the house did not like showing me to myself. A second room held an old bed frame and a dresser with drawers half pulled out. Inside one drawer was a bundle of hair tied with twine. Not animal fur. Human hair. Several shades. Several lengths. I dropped it like it burned me. Upstairs, I went anyway because I could not stand the not knowing. The steps creaked under my weight. The air grew colder as I climbed, as if heat did not rise here. At the top, a narrow hallway stretched between dark rooms. I swept my flashlight beam across the walls. More marks. Not tallies. Scratch lines. Spirals. Circles. Symbols that made my eyes want to slide away. In the first room, the window was open. The curtain moved though there was no wind. The air smelled of pine sap and smoke. On the floor beneath the window were footprints. Bare, long-toed prints pressed into dust. Fresh. I backed out, heart pounding. The second room held a rocking chair facing the corner. Not the window. The corner. The chair was still. But the floor beneath it was gouged from motion, as if it rocked all night and all day and wore a track into the boards. I stepped closer and the chair creaked once. By itself. Like it had just shifted weight. I did not stay long enough to see if it moved again. The last room at the end of the hall had its door shut. It was the only closed door upstairs. I stood in front of it and listened. At first, nothing. Then a faint sound like paper sliding across paper. Like someone turning pages slowly. I reached for the knob and my hand stopped an inch away. Because from behind the door, a voice breathed my name. Soft. Right against the wood. I jerked back. I did not answer. The voice said my name again, almost amused. Then the sound changed into a whispering laugh that did not sound human and did not sound like an animal either. My throat squeezed. I forced myself to step away. I went back downstairs and shut myself in the living room with my back against the wall. Outside, afternoon faded into evening. The light drained fast, like something was pulling it out of the sky. The smoke smell returned in faint waves. I tried to distract myself by unpacking my survey equipment, by pretending I would do the job and leave in the morning. But my hands would not stop shaking. As darkness fell, the lantern lights returned at the tree lean. Small orange points drifting between the pines. They moved closer than before. They circled the clearing, slow and steady, like they were tracing a boundary. I turned off every light inside. I sat in the dark and listened. The house creaked. The woods breathed. Then, from the cellar doors, a knock. From the back door, a scrape. From upstairs, the slow turn of a page. 3 sounds. 3 directions. The note said choose one door and keep it closed. My brain finally understood what my body had been trying to say all day. The doors were not keeping things out. They were keeping things in. Night thickened. The lantern lights stopped moving. They lined up at the edge of the clearing, evenly spaced, like people standing shoulder to shoulder. I could not see bodies. Only the lights. Then the voice came again, outside the front door. My name. I bit down on my tongue until I tasted blood, forcing myself to stay silent. The voice tried a different tone. It sounded like my mother now, then like an old friend, then like my own voice, pleading. It was not trying to scare me. It was trying to make me speak. Something tapped the front window, gentle at first, then harder, then a slow dragging sound like nails across glass. From the kitchen, the back door frame groaned. From the cellar, the knocking resumed, faster now. From upstairs, the rocking chair began to move. Creak, creak, creak. I pressed my hands over my ears and still heard it, because the sound felt like it was inside the walls. Then the house went silent all at once. No knocks, no scraping, no rocking. A pause so sudden it made me dizzy. I lowered my hands. In that silence, I heard a new sound. Footsteps on the porch. Bare feet. Slow, deliberate. They stopped right in front of the front door. A soft thump as if someone leaned their forehead against it. Then, right at the keyhole, a breath. Warm, wet, and a whisper, not my name this time. A single word. Open. My hand twitched toward the deadbolt before I caught myself. It was not curiosity. It was not bravery. It was compulsion. A tug at the base of my brain, like a string tied to my wrist. I stumbled backward, fighting it. The whisper came again. Open. Then, from the cellar doors, something slammed so hard the whole house shuddered. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The whisper at the keyhole turned into a sound like a smile. I realized then that if the cellar door opened, whatever was under there would come into the house. And if it came into the house, the front door might not matter. I crawled toward the kitchen, staying low, moving like prey. I had an idea, desperate and stupid. The note said if you smell smoke, hold your breath. Smoke meant something below. Something that used ash and heat like a lure. What if I gave it smoke somewhere else? I found the old fireplace in the living room. I gathered the driest scraps I could find, torn cloth from a sheet, old paper from a drawer, bits of brittle wood. My hands worked fast, clumsy. Outside, the lanterns held position like watchful eyes. The whisper at the front door continued, steady. I struck a lighter. The flame looked too bright in the dark. I lit the bundle in the fireplace. It caught fast, hungry. Smoke rose. Not much, but enough to smell. Almost immediately, the whisper at the front door stopped. The house seemed to inhale. The knocking at the cellar paused. Then, slowly, like something shifting its attention, the sound moved. A scrape beneath the floorboards. A dragging sound traveling through the house toward the fireplace. My stomach clenched. I had moved it. Whatever it was inside the structure now, moving under me. The floor beneath my boots vibrated faintly, like a distant engine. Then the fireplace soot stirred. Ash lifted in a thin spiral, rising and twisting as if caught by an invisible breath. The small fire flickered sideways. A shape formed in the ash. Not a body. More like the outline of a mouth opening in smoke. The air turned bitter and hot. I held my breath until my chest screamed. The ash mouth widened. And in my head, not in the room, I heard my name again. My vision narrowed. My lungs wanted air. The compulsion returned, stronger than before, pulling me toward the fireplace like it was a door I could step through. I stumbled back, choking without breathing, eyes watering. I knocked into the coffee table. It scraped. The noise broke something. The ash mouth shivered. The lanterns outside flared brighter for a second. Then the front door handle rattled. The back door frame groaned. Upstairs, the rocking chair slammed into the wall. All at once, the house erupted in noise, as if my little fire had rung a dinner bell. I could not keep holding my breath. I inhaled. Smoke filled my lungs and I coughed, loud and ragged. Outside, the lanterns moved in. They glided toward the house, fast now, a line of orange approaching the porch. The front door handle rattled harder. The cellar slammed again. The house shook. I ran. Not toward the doors. Toward the one place the note had told me not to go. The trees. I grabbed my flashlight and my keys and bolted out a side window that I forced open with my shoulder. Cold night air hit me like salvation. I sprinted across the clearing toward the tree line. Behind me, the front door burst open with a sound like wood splitting. I did not look back. I crossed into the forest and the darkness swallowed me whole. The pines closed around me. Needles ate my footsteps. My flashlight beam shook wildly, illuminating trunks like pillars and shadows like crouched animals. I ran until my legs burned. Then I stopped because something was wrong. The forest was too still. The lantern lights did not follow. No footsteps behind me. No crashing through brush. Only silence and my own breathing. I slowed, forcing myself to listen. That was when I heard the breathing again. Deep, close. Not behind me. All around me. The pines swayed without wind. My flashlight beam caught the fabric strips tied around trees. They were here too. Not just on the road. They formed a corridor, guiding me deeper. I should have turned back. But I could not see which way was back. The trees looked identical in every direction, like the forest had copied and pasted itself. I walked forward, slow, following the fabric like a person following a trail of bones. The smoke smell returned. Stronger. The air grew warmer. Then the ground under my boots changed. Not dirt. Boards. I froze. I pointed my flashlight down. A trapdoor, half buried in needles. Old wood. Iron hinges. On the wood were scratches. Tallies. Hundreds. Grouped in uneven clusters. My stomach turned to water. This was not the cellar at the house. This was another one. Out here. Hidden. The breathing deepened. The pines seemed to lean in. Then, from somewhere close, a whisper. Not my name. A word. Open. My hand moved toward the trapdoor handle without my permission. My fingers touched cold iron, and the darkness under the door felt like it pushed up against the wood, eager. I did the only thing I could think to do. I let go. I stepped back. I turned off my flashlight. Instant black. I stood perfectly still and tried to become part of the dark. I remembered the gas station man. Better if they think you are part of the dark. In the black, the compulsion weakened, like it needed me to see the door to want it. The breathing paused. The whisper faded. Somewhere far off, a lantern light blinked. Then another. Then a slow drifting glow through the trees, moving away from me. I waited until my knees ached. I waited until my heartbeat slowed enough that I could hear the forest again. Then I moved, blind, step by careful step, keeping my hands out in front of me, feeling bark and needles and damp air. I walked for what felt like hours. Sometimes I smelled smoke and held my breath until my head swam. Sometimes I heard my name and bit down hard on my tongue. Sometimes I saw faint orange light between the pines and dropped to the ground until it drifted away. Eventually, the forest thinned. I saw a lighter patch ahead. Not sun. Road. I stepped out onto dirt and nearly collapsed. My truck was there, parked at the edge of the trees like it had been waiting. The clearing, the house, the sign were gone. Just woods and road and the gray edge of dawn. I did not question it. I got in, started the engine, and drove. The road did not fork. The bridge was gone. The Crow mailbox never appeared. Within 20 minutes, I hit patched pavement. Then 2-lane blacktop. Then the first road sign I had seen in hours. I reached town as the diner opened. I parked shaking and walked inside because I needed human noise, human light. The waitress looked at me like she had seen my face before, even though I knew she had not. I asked for coffee. She poured it without a word. My hands trembled around the mug. I tried to tell myself I had hallucinated. Sleep deprivation. Carbon monoxide. Panic. Then I looked down at my wrist. There was a strip of fabric tied around it. Faded red. The knot tight enough to bite into skin. I did not remember tying it. I tried to pull it off. It would not budge. The waitress finally spoke, voice low. She asked if I had driven Hollow Pines Road. I did not answer. She nodded like my silence was enough. Then she told me something I will never forget. She said the road does not always let you leave. Sometimes it sends you back wrong. Sometimes it sends you back carrying something. She leaned closer, eyes wide and tired. She said to go home, lock my doors, keep my lights off at night. And if I heard my name in the dark, to never answer. Because whatever learned it would not forget it. That was 3 years ago. I live in a different state now. I do not take rural contracts. I do not drive roads without signs. But sometimes, late at night, when the house is quiet and the wind is not blowing, I smell smoke in my bedroom. And I hold my breath. Because in the silence that follows, I hear a slow knock. Not on the door. Not on the window. On the walls. Like something walking the perimeter, tapping gently, patiently, making sure I know it found me.
Before you go, look around the room for a moment. The story may have stopped here. If any of these stories stayed with you, you're not alone. Comment below the moment that made you pause, the part you can't stop thinking about, or the timestamp that felt too real. And if you don't want to face nights like this alone, subscribe now. New true horror stories every night, longer, darker, and closer to home. Turn off the lights, keep the volume low, and check your surroundings one last time. Good night.